Hi, this is Phil, and I'm here to tell you all about the Capes and Lunatics Patreon. Don't miss out on our comic book creator interviews, including our monthly Chichester chats with comic book legend DG Chichester, superhero movie brackets in our search for the worst comic book movie of all time, and many, many more specials, all completely uncensored. Access starts for $3 a month, full video when you pledge $5 a month. Check out the link in our show notes or go to patreon.com/CapesandLunatics. Hope to see you there.
Hello, cats and kittens, and welcome back once again to Superconnectivity. I'm your host, Charlie, the Professor Esser, and with me, as always, is my skinny rich friend.
It's Mozz.
Hey, Mozz. So glad you're here. So glad to have you back, as always. A lot of things to talk about. Justin Roiland, Velma's Rise and Fall and Rise Again. And what was the third I know there was a third topic I sent you. There was so many
the
topics.
Netflix CEO saying they've never.
Oh yeah, what is a success? What is this? So let's because I think that's going to feed into a lot of other things. Let's start with what is a success on Netflix, because that's this controversial statement from the Netflix CEO, where he says, look, we have never canceled a successful series. But that immediately opens the question of what is a successful series. And in traditional premise, and he actually explains how he defines it, which is that, look, you can make a small film for a small group of people, and so long as your small group of people keep on showing up for your small film, we will keep on running it. Or you can make a big film for a bunch of people. As long as a bunch of people keep showing up, we'll keep on running it. And the reason why shows get canceled is they're making a big film for a small group of people. And just, it doesn't get the traction that it needs to have Netflix keep on reinvesting. And that's sort of the premise. And it's a fair premise, I think. I don't think that goes out on a limb. But other people will point out that, you can't really tell what is a success.
Because they don't share their viewership numbers.
Well, but, you can work with Nielsen, and there's other groups. And then we'll get to Nielsen.
No. But Nielsen doesn't count what Netflix is doing. Like, those numbers.
Yes,
Nielsen, you can't see how many people watched anything on Netflix. They keep that private.
No, you can't see how many people. So, okay. So this is the question. So, Nielsen does do numbers for streaming content and everything else. They do numbers for video games, actually. So, like, if you're a Nielsen family and you either have a diary or a people meter, you let it know what you're doing. And so, if you're playing video games, it says this is how many people played video games during that period of time. If you go to what were people watching, they'll say, here's who was watching the show, here's when they watched it. And it's written in your diary, if you're following the diary rule, me and my wife, we sat down, we watched Velma this week, and you send it off to them, and then, next week they're going to have, these are the overnights, and these are the long-term Nielsen ratings. So Nielsen...
I think from what I'm seeing, they have, like, how much people watched each service. But I don't think they're measuring how much each show is being watched.
Well, they do. Well, no, they do. They do.
That's been a long-standing gripe that a lot of the people that sign contracts with Netflix to produce stuff is. They're like, oh, we're going to keep those numbers secret. We'll let you know if it was successful or not, but we're not going to tell you what your numbers are.
True, and that is the thing.
So, I mean, that makes it a little bit harder to make that point. Like, I mean, I understand where he's coming from, and they're a private company. They have every right to keep those things private, but it really would help your argument if you just showed us the numbers and be like, yo, I can prove it to you. Here's my work, Here's the long division.
And you know what the problem with that is that it doesn't necessarily, and this is actually really where it gets into this, when you get into the weeds. So let's say that you had, a show we both enjoyed, and it was one of the full stream ahead episodes we did was, I think it was called I'm Really Not Okay With This.
Oh,
What the girl develops the psychic powers, starts exploding heads. A neat take on the Firestarter, premise. And, I enjoyed it. It was really good. We talked about it. We liked it. But, the fact of the matter is it did not get renewed past the second season. And to be fair, that's because it was, even though it was a low budget film, as far as I knew, it was just you and me talking about it,
No, I thought there was a good buzz about it, on social media and whatnot. It touched on some interesting premises and it was timely, and I thought it was written really well and acted really well, shot really well.
It was a very good show.
But it seems like that happens to a lot of the shows that I really end up liking, like Counterpart, that show on Stars, got canceled after 2 seasons. There was that other J.K. Simmons project where they had like this hidey hole in their house that let them go to another dimension or another planet. I forget what it was called, but it was so good, and that got canceled. Then there was another show on Netflix called The OA, which was like this really weird, unbelievably weird, but unbelievably charming show about this guy who kidnaps a bunch of people and keeps them locked in these rooms, and they figure out some way through some forms of their body, whatever, they can travel to different dimensions and escape their captivity. Fascinating show. And Bright Martling wrote 5 seasons of it. They did, I think, 2, and then they canceled the show. It was so good, but
but the thing is this is the thing, and this, so going back to the first show, it was a small show, so it didn't have to have a huge audience, but it did need to get some zeitgeistery buzz.
Yeah.
And the thing is, and it's sort of like when you go to look for people talking about it, that's a self-selecting group. So 10 people in a chat room can make you think that everyone's watching this show. This is such a great show, but it's not going to be a big hit, And you'll see this every so often when there's something that you really liked as a pop cultural reference, and then you suddenly realize that no one else really knows it. So, like, for example, I read the entire, it's called First Kingdom, which was a great little, like, post-apocalyptic sword and sorcery sci-fi comic book, that was actually produced by it was produced by the Bud Plant comic book company, and it's a very obscure.
Bud as in Anheuser-Busch, Budweiser?
No, Bud Plant. It's Bud Plant is, and I don't even know if they're still around. Let me just check this out here.
I just thought you meant like a Budweiser bottling plant, like Bud
Kingdom. No.
Or Bud Plant, like we're talking about THC.
Well, I don't know if that might be part of the First Kingdom, number 7, Bud Plant. Jack Katz is the producer of it. He created these back in the late 70s, and they're a really delightful. They're a good set of comics. And like I said, when I was a kid, I ate them up because Bud Plant said the entire First Kingdom line. Here, let me see. Can I share? I'll show you some of the covers of these.
Hold on 1 second here.
Let me look for where you share things on.
It's going to be on the bottom of the screen, the little green button with an arrow.
Yep, there it is. Perfect. So let me go share. And so this is just to give you a sense of what it was. And
make sure you hit the button to share sound. Otherwise,
Yep, I'm doing it right now. Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
Don't need the Burger King commercial there. Or sorry, McDonald's, yes. But yeah, so you see, it's like, it's your classic,
Gotcha.
sword, sorcery, arts, and it's all based like back in, like after the fall of man, and then the rise back to humanity, and then the eventual rise back into becoming a starfaring humanity again, which is cool, as you do. And I really loved that. And the only problem is that, you know, as it turns out, how do I stop sharing now? There you go, stop sharing. And the only problem is that it's super obscure, and so I could make references to the gods of Hellas Voron, which was a great go-to phrase for me back in my youth, but no one knows who they are. And it's great, and it's wonderful. It's and really, it actually is cool because you actually got all these, like, intros written by, like, Larry Lieber. In fact, Stan Lieber, who is Stan Lee, wrote one of this, but he doesn't sign it Stan Lee. He signs it Stanley Lieber, in one of the intros to it. So, you know, Jack Katz was a guy who just said, you know what, I'm just going to make my own thing, and I'm going to do it. And Bud Plant, you know, put it out there, and they sold a bunch of copies. And I have them. But it gets obscure because you have to capture the zeitgeist to really grow as a show. And unfortunately, some shows don't. And when you're putting these out, you know, that's sort of the thing. Because one thing that we've seen with Netflix is that once there's an interest in a show, so like, for example, stuff like Arrested Development, they brought back, they're more than happy to bring a show back if there is a zeitgeist and a push for it.
Right,
but if there's no
the danger becomes the further away you get from when it happened. All those actors are doing other things, and to get, you know, those group of people back together in the same way to produce a product similar to what they did before, it's a tall order. It is, and that is the crux of the problem with what is a success at Netflix. You know, you want to believe that a show is doing well, but you know, if there's not anything in the show that's transferring from one point to the next, it's harder to say, you know? And for what it's worth, that's why, just to get into the whole thing of it, that's why shows that are based on existing IP become the dominant life form. I will say this, though. I mean, we've always lauded Netflix for being risk takers, willing to take on projects and put money into projects just to see if they would work. So if they have to, you know, cut some pounds here or there in order to make the rest of the machine run, I'm happy for it, because their philosophy of taking risks with projects that you wouldn't really be able to see unless they were funding it, have even propelled like Amazon to get into the game and produce things, like Jack Ryan and Jack Reacher. Those are all like sort of very niche kind of shows, but, they're very exciting, and I'm glad they're getting made. And I think a lot of it has to do with, the pioneering work that Netflix did in that regard.
Oh yeah. And although again, to that point, I think that, you know, Netflix has, again, like everybody else, bet on stuff that had a following. So Jack Ryan and Jack Reacher, there is a market for it. You know, these shows were probably going to get made. Daredevil and Luke Cage, they're probably going to get made as shows somewhere. Netflix kind of just got there first and was able to put up the seed money for it. But the fact of the matter is that there was always a following for that. What is more obscure is when they go out and they do pick up something small just to see if it will click, you know, and you look at something like Stranger Things. And Stranger Things, there's not a reason for it to be a big hit. I'm going to be honest, I still have not watched the most recent season of Stranger Things. But the fact of the matter is that it is a big hit and didn't have anything to build on except, of course, 80s nostalgia.
Right. Member berries.
Yes, but you know what? That's a thing. Yeah. You know, one thing I am very much enjoying right now is that 90s show. I've
heard good things. I didn't want to give it any attention because I was afraid it was going to be bad and tarnish the memories of these characters, but people seem to be reacting pretty positively to it. I'm excited to check it out.
I mean, look, I will say this. If you like that 70s show, you'll probably like that 90s show.
Right on.
I would love it if there was a character from that 80s show that would show up in it, but that's a whole other bag of hammers if you remember that 80s show.
I wish I didn't.
Yes, that's okay. It wasn't that good, but it wasn't that bad.
Fair enough, but
yeah.
You're trying to fill some shoes. Do a halfway, heartfelt job.
Yeah, they were doing a different thing, and you have to sometimes. And in this one, they're going back to the exact original. Hey, teenagers in the basement smoking pot, because you know what? That's evergreen.
Yeah, and then the adults upstairs having their cocktails, thinking they're any better.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So it's a lot of fun, and it's been enjoyable. And what I'll tell you is, it doesn't have to grab the zeitgeist as much, because it already has its own zeitgeist. It already has its own universe, and it's a continuation. Yeah. It's an in-universe continuation, which gets its own carrying over. And so I think that's going to do well. What is interesting, and this is a show that does need the zeitgeist, so I do want to throw this out there, is Poker Face on Peacock.
I've seen trailer or ads for it. What is this about?
So it's about a woman that can just always tell when someone's lying. So it's about a woman. I say that I kid.
Of course.
But yeah, it's about this woman who can always tell when someone's lying, and she goes in and she had this. She's working at this casino, and she's just got a nice, quiet life, and she's not doing anything big because she doesn't want to do anything big. She's not like a superhero or a supervillain. She just has this weird power that lets her know when someone's lying, which, as she points out, it's not as useful as you think it is outside of playing poker. And if you get blackballed in poker, you can't play poker. So I don't want to give the whole premise away, but basically, if you like Columbo, this is produced by Ryan Johnson, the guy who gave us Glass Onion and Knives Out and a few other pieces of work that some people like and some people hate. And it's really good. And like I said, there is a moment where you realize, oh wow, that lady, if they were going to do a new Columbo, this would be the actor you would have play Columbo. Because she gets that exact Peter Falk cadence of the person trying to figure something out and knowing something but not being able to deal with it. Although there's a twist on this in that she's not a cop and she's not trying to catch anyone. She's just trying to survive in this, and it kind of moves into a spot where it's going to be like The Fugitive meets Columbo, and I'm excited for it. Because I don't pay for Peacock, I have to wait for every Thursday for it to drop, but that's okay. I like when shows drop on a regular basis, Yeah. I don't need to watch everything right away.
Yeah.
And along those lines, that goes into what comes out as the next big surprise of the world, which is that Velma is actually doing really well in the ratings.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it actually has, even after, so you had your initial Curiosity downloads, which was huge. Then you have everything that's happened since then, and people are still going back and watching every week. And maybe they're hate watching, maybe they're not. I don't know. But as they say about everything in entertainment, it's about engagement. Whether people are engaged with anger or they're engaged with happiness, they're paying for it and they're watching it.
Yeah.
And that goes back to what I was saying about Netflix. It's it doesn't matter if one person watches something 100 times. They actually need the individual eyeballs watching it. Because that's individual subscriptions, and that's how they make their money.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter how many times you watch one show. That doesn't really up their numbers at Netflix.
And no matter how much you like a thing, sometimes it doesn't deserve to necessarily exist. Case in point, the Snyderverse.
Yeah, well, that is an opinion that people have. See, to me, and that's my biggest thing with Velma. I really don't care that other stories exist. And if you were super excited about the Snyderverse and you were so happy that it finally got put out there, it's okay,
But I think for the rest of DC fans that were just waiting for something good to happen and just let this thing fade away into the past, like, no, let's drag its dead body out, parade it around town, and everybody will pretend like it's, the king's got clothes on.
Yeah, not everybody likes the same things you and I.
And it puts us behind, like we could have built something better by now, but we had to, no, all these complainees are out here picketing and, pitchforking. So let's waste another 5 years in this, quagmire of a situation.
And that, my friend, is the basic problem with DC and Warner Brothers in general. And now, Matt, people are mad about James Gunn coming in and also riding roughshod over the DC universe and canceling shows. Still not canceling The Flash.
No, but you know what the funny thing about it? Man, they must have made a banger of a movie, though. Because, it must be so good. Michael Keaton was in it. All these people were in it. It must be so good that they are not willing to walk away from this situation.
You know what? But to me, I mean, that's the Black Adam conundrum. It's like, I like Black Adam. I know you enjoyed Black Adam too. Yeah. It was a cool movie. But at the same time, I'm not going to sit here and say it was Citizen Kane. I'm not going to sit here and say this is this is the rock upon which we will build the church of the future DC universe. This is not the power structure of the DC universe changing, as Mr. Johnson said. This is that was a cute film, and okay.
And it was all I needed it to be, right? Yeah. Trying to take itself more seriously than it deserves sometimes is really off-putting. Like that. Yeah,
but that one was also, group, But the point is that one was also in development, heck, for years.
Yeah,
that was supposed to come out very early on in the Snyderverse.
It was The Rock's last ditch effort to try to save it, and you're right. Even that was part of that whole thing. And I think that, man, it just, I'm excited to see something new. Right? I don't care what you think of James Gunn or whatever. The fact that he's taking an axe to everything and rebuilding, I think that's maybe a good idea. I think we should get rid of the whole enterprise and start over again. I personally think that what James Gunn is doing now is just a half measure. I think we need to scrap it and just start over and clean slate it. Let's not carry any baggage over, but they're still going to carry a lot of baggage, and it's gonna drag. Yeah.
Well, and the biggest problem is that there's clearly fighting at Warner's. And there's clearly people making, for example, James Gunn even came out and said he's not the one that canceled Teen Titans and Doom Patrol. He said that was, which is also kind of this weird thing where you say he's in charge, but he's not the one that's making the decisions. So immediately you get into that. It's because it's well, if you wanted to save it and you say you're the one in charge, you could have saved it. But then at the end of the day, there's also this question of, does he want to save it? Is this going to be really central to what the larger plan is? And if it's not being successful, why do you want to save it? It's just another show that, it might be good and it might be bad. But it's just here, and we're going to deal with what it is. And it's had 4 seasons, which is a lot. Not every show goes as long as, other shows. And if you don't have a built-in audience, and for what it's worth, Teen Titans and Doom Patrol, both because they have to dance outside of the DC universe in their own ways, don't get to have that larger connectivity the way that Marvel characters like Ms. Marvel or Hawkeye do, that they get to be a part of those things and they get to be in it. And even She-Hulk and Daredevil, when they come into these things, it's part of this larger story. And so when you say we're going to have these guys off in the corner, but we're going to actively kind of not let them be a part of this larger story, even if we're going to reference these other people, it kind of hurts itself because you don't know where it goes next.
Right. It doesn't feel like required watching. And sometimes Marvel goes too heavy-handed in the other direction where people are like, my God, how much stuff do I have to watch to be able to watch the movies and understand what's going on? So there's a complaint on that side too. But I prefer that over this because had I been compelled to complete the story and watch these shows, I probably would have. If the world at large was interesting enough to begin with. And maybe that's the reason they keep these things separated, because it's like, man, we don't want to infect these good shows with the mess over there, let's get,
Yeah, but that's the Inhumans conundrum, because that's why Inhumans refused to let themselves be tied into Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. because they were afraid Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was going to be the non-canon thing and the problematic thing, and never realized that they were the problems themselves.
Oh my God.
And that really, the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is probably really well positioned to come back, as I've often said in Secret Invasion, to have something come back with it, whatever it'll be, I don't know. But just the idea that this thing exists, but that this idea of, I don't want to be a part of that, I think that's a bad choice. That's always a bad choice when something is even at least relatively successful. You want to sort of let yourself weave into it, and to try and deny it, especially in a group like Marvel, in which it's all connected is its catchphrase.
Well, they got their day to shine, and man, was it satisfying watching Black Bolt's head pop.
Yeah, well, that was...
Because I got to tell you, I don't know what other roles that actor has played, but I thought he was terrible in this role.
Oh, no, he's terrible as Black Bolt, and he's very good. That's the guy who plays Pike on Star Trek Strange New Worlds.
Oh, yeah. Okay, gotcha. Oh, wow.
Anson Mount, he's a fantastic actor. He just doesn't know how to do silent acting, and it might also be that the director didn't know how to have him do...
It was so on the nose, so overacted, so is indicating with everything that he was doing.
Yeah, well, exactly, and you have to talk with your eyes with that, and like I said,
but
yeah,
he was yelling with his eyes constantly. You know what I mean?
Yes. Well, that's why I say he seems a little bit dyspeptic, because it seems like he just always had an upset stomach. Which I guess if you're holding it in all the time, maybe you do. So maybe that was a choice. But either way, no, his performance as Black Bolt is not that good. His performance as Pike is amazing, and he has really cemented himself as Pike now. Which I think is a good thing, and, they may even do another split timeline where Pike doesn't wind up in the chair. So that'd be good. So it'll be neat to see where Pike goes next and where Strange New Worlds goes next as it builds into that early Enterprise. But yeah, it's all very interesting, how these shows get put together and how they fall apart. Speaking of which, let's talk real quick about Justin Roiland, who hit a wall recently. Or not a wall, but, so all facts on the table. We don't know exactly what's going on, but we know that he was arrested for felony domestic abuse, which is bad.
Didn't they find, illicit, material on his computer, too?
Oh, I don't know. I don't really read those. Here's the thing. I don't like to go too deep into any article about any case before it's actually being adjudicated, because there's so much that's just, and they found this and they found that. And it's the old how to get ahead in advertising cliche about, the bag may have contained heroin, or it may have contained plum pudding.
Fair enough.
Which is just this idea that, people can say all sorts of things because that's not legal testimony. So they can say, well, I heard that they found XYZ on his computer. And that's possible. And to be fair, and again, this is one of those weird things where it's like, it sounds bad, but it's like, I don't want to kink shame someone because they like something that is untoward. If it was done legally,
but I think it was like illegal. And
okay, well, if it's illegal stuff, it's illegal. It's like
right. That's what I think. From what I've and again, I didn't really want to look too much into it because I haven't watched Rick and Morty in years. But I think the fact that they're going to try to keep the show going without him, it's just going to be a waste of money to find out that it wasn't going to work, in my opinion.
Well, see, so there's this is my argument on this. I actually think they made the right choice. And here's the actual deeper aspect of it. I think Justin Roiland, in not making a big stink about it, because they took him off all of his shows.
Yeah.
He's not on Solar Opposites. He's not on any of these things anymore. I think that's actually the best practical play because even though he's not actively affiliated with it, he still gets a creator credit on all of these. And so by union regulations, he still gets paid for the work that's being done. If it fails, it just shows that, you couldn't do it without him. And if he gets adjudicated positively at the end of this, because, we're in a world of lawsuits and he could come out smelling like a rose at the end of it, just like Johnny Depp has,
that was a different situation.
Yeah, well, that was also not. Yeah, that was a whole bag of hammers with that, and I don't want to get into that one either. But the point is that, however this plays out, everybody's sort of being cautious and practical because all they said is that he's not going to be working on the show, he's not going to be voicing the characters, so his paychecks from those are gone. His creator by credit, even if they don't put it on the TV show, it still exists in the contracts. So he will still get paid on that. I mean, that's just union regulations. You can't take that away from someone. You can't say, well, since we fired you, you no longer get to be a part of your own creation.
And that's, all well and good. I just don't think the show will be able to have that same vibe, or you're not going to be able to sell different voice actors for it. It'll be
to me, I think that's the basic question of how much of Rick and Morty was Justin Roiland anymore, and how much of it was Dan Harmon.
Yeah, I mean, well, to me, it's going to be like when Steve Carell left The Office. You'll have like a draggy couple of seasons before you're like, yeah, that was a bad idea. What were we thinking?
I mean, I'm sure people thought the same thing when Ricky Gervais left The Office,
Well, I don't know if he left The Office. They did.
No, but it's the idea that once you do a new take on something, it's, it always has a hard time recapturing itself. But I actually think that it could do well because I think that there is, and it really comes down to what do the fans, what do your rabid Snyderverse fans say about this if the writing stays solid and it's just a switch out of voice actors, And if they switch out the voice actors, is it as bad as it could be?
Yeah, but you think the writing can stay solid? That somebody can come in there, or that they're just going to hire somebody to milk this thing for the last?
No. Well, they have a whole team of writers, and Dan Harmon. That's the thing. It's like it's arguable that Dan Harmon has been the guy in charge of writing it for a while. I mean, really, because that's the thing. Is like every time that they do any kind of really story meta stuff, it's all Dan Harmon's notes, the story circle and all that kind of stuff. That's all Dan Harmon. So, it's entirely possible that, they're going to be able to maintain it. We don't know. We'll have to see it season 7 because they're already well into production on season 7 and all the work that he did on season 7 is already done. So they may do season 7 and call it a day, and his fingerprints are on it. Dan Harmon will take the wheel. And they'll guide it through this last round, and maybe they'll end it on a cliffhanger, And then whatever happens with Justin Roiland will be whatever happened with Justin Roiland.
And then maybe in 20 years, somebody will do a Velma level retake on Rick and Morty.
That's interesting because it's like, where do you go to completely reimagine Rick and Morty? You kind of have to go in the opposite direction, and it's just like. And it's just the Rick that stayed, and the Rick
interesting.
who used his super genius, who realized what a jerk Rick Prime was, and immediately just said, "No, I'm outsmarting you because
he becomes the one who remains."
Yeah, it's like I understand what you're trying to do. You're trying to get me on your crazy adventure, but I want to stay with my wife and daughter. Even if she does wind up with what's his name? The husband, I want to just maintain my family, and
Yeah.
you Ricks are not going to pull me into your nonsense. And that's how you reimagine Rick and Morty, and you make it a much more wholesome show, which will be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, oh, by the way, with Velma, I will say this. If you watch till episode 5, there is a shift that happens in the characterization that I do think is going to be central to it. And I think that that's sort of what this, as I've said, I think the whole arc is about the journey. And in fact, I think you're going to find out at the very end of it that Norval has a dog named Scoob. And he's like, oh, how did I not know you had a dog? It's like, I've had this dog since I was a kid. What are you talking about, Velma? It's like, yeah, I guess we've all been kind of self-absorbed these last few years.
I hope they keep his signature sound.
Oh, yes.
I hope they don't mess with
you
that.
have to.
I hope they don't mess with that. That's the one thing that would, I think, be too crucial to change.
No, I don't think they'll get rid of that. I think he'll be a talking dog, just like everything else, But they may even have him the first time being like like the dogs that say "I love you,"
Yeah.
I love you, Racky. I can totally see that being a thing. But they actually, I can't remember if Casey Kasem is still around, but they actually did do the voice of Casey Kasem on this most recent episode. So it's like, they clearly do have a love of the original work. They're just taking it in a new direction. And it's like, people don't always like when we go in a new direction. And that's the history of entertainment,
And there's a sea of people just waiting at their computers. Oh, can I complain about this? Oh, I can complain about this. And So,
which brings us to the Razzies, which is literally, so a moment about the Razzies recently. They nominated the little girl who was in the Firestarter remake for Worst Actress or Worst Actor. I don't know if they are still genderizing it or if they, or female actor. And you know what? And the thing is, she's 12, and it's a little mean, no argument. It's a little mean, because she's a kid, and it's like, what do you want from a child actor? First off, you can't be nominating child actors for being the worst actor, because there's a lot of child actors who are not very good.
Right.
And to pick one out that was arguably actually pretty good in the role, that most people felt she actually was able to take the role and bring that Barrymore level gravitas to it, even if the rest of the movie was not as good. It is a thing. And to nominate her for Worst Actress just because the movie was bad seemed mean-spirited. And of course, as soon as this was pointed out, mostly by a bunch of other child actors who were like, dude, that's not cool, man. Child actors who were not nominated for Razzies, including the kid who played Billy on WandaVision.
He wasn't that bad. He was pretty good.
No, he wasn't bad,
yeah.
but he was mad that how do you come at a kid? How do you come at a kid? And it's, and you think back to kids like the kid who played Anakin in The Phantom Menace, who got badly bullied, apparently, because, and it's like, first of all, I don't know why anyone does that. I don't know why you're going to pick on a kid ever. It's like, take that, small person.
Right. But I mean, like, Star Wars fans are rabid, like they take it's like a religion to them.
Which it shouldn't be. I like Spider-Man as much as the next guy. And I actually tried to dedicate myself to the premise that with great power comes great responsibility, and I believe this in my heart. And I do actually think that, those stories give you a moral compass that is very strong and important. But I don't sit here being mad. I'm not the guy that's out burning pitchforks about things, It's like, let's let's just chill and understand that this was written by comic book creators and this was written by George Lucas, and it's great and it's wonderful. But let's not, it's like, it's good to have a religion that puts you in harmony with the universe. It's bad to have a religion that tells you that those are the evil ones and we must destroy them.
Right.
You know, not everybody's a Sith, man, you know. But anyway, yeah, so, but that's the thing. But of course, this opens up that basic question about the Razzies, which is that the Razzies are, by their nature, meant to be in good fun of being a bad film, you know, and it should be that. It should be that. And like Halle Berry winning an Oscar and a Razzie in the same year is just the classic example of what the Razzie should be. You know, where you go and you accept your Razzie and you admit that, yeah, maybe this is not my best performance, but dang it, I did it and I got paid. And you know what? I had fun on the set. And if you didn't have fun in the theater, I'm sorry. That's on you, boo. You know, and that's what the Razzie should be. But, you know, sometimes, especially in our culture, we get this anger that people decide to have that hurts things, you know, that makes it not as fun because people are just deciding that they don't want to have fun. They just want to be angry, you know?
And I think the danger that people see is that you do something like that and it causes a lot of other people to start bullying the child. Like the Razzies in of itself, poking fun maybe isn't that bad, but I think with times the way they are and people that are not able to control their emotions as well, and social media giving you a platform to express those unformed, unthoughtful emotions immediately before you have a chance to really analyze why you're feeling the way that you do, makes things really, really raw and dangerous.
Exactly. You know, and it's the basic problem, you know, it just, everyone wants to be right and no one wants to be good. And that's the problem, you know, whereas if people always wanted to be good and didn't worry so much about whether or not they were right, things would be a much better place.
Yeah.
But these are the philosophies of the people that actually think about these things, I hope, you know, and if you don't think about it, well, then, you know, that's you. That's on you, you know.
Maybe it'll just take us time to get there. This is so fresh for us, being able to express our emotions so immediately, so urgently, that it'll take maybe a decade or two for us to learn how to use it appropriately.
Well, and I think this is really the truth of it. Although I do think that I do think there is a self-limiting factor in outrage. I think that it does burn brightly and quickly. And, you know, I was watching Legal on YouTube and he was discussing the Alex Jones decision. And just listening to the way Alex Jones described the people suing him, and he's trying to be very, what's the word I'm looking for? Very dismissive of them. And he described them as very blue-collar people. And that, to me, as a blue-collar guy, as a guy who grew up blue-collar, just struck me as like, why would you use that as a derisive term? Why would you say these are blue-collar people when, and I guess this is the funny thing, I assumed his following was blue-collar people, but I realize now maybe not as much as I'd like to think, that there's probably a lot of white-collar people that do have that social engineering dismissiveness of blue collar people because they managed to get themselves into an office job and they feel that, you know, and so maybe these people buying the blue hormone drinks are actually not the blue collar rednecks that some popular media want us to think, but actually the people that are following this are people who think of themselves as educated, think of themselves as, you know, what do you call it?
Intellectuals,
you know. And I do know that there are a lot of blue collar people who think of themselves as intellectuals, and I think there is a lot of overlap in that Venn diagram, you know, where, you know, because that is what happens when you are somewhat self-educated. You know, being a self-educated person sometimes means you will go down a rabbit hole and you won't know how to get out. And, you know, you get this idea of, oh, this is what I'm supposed to, you know, I'm trying to find my own way, and I'm trying to educate myself because I didn't have the opportunity to be educated in an institution. I didn't get institutionalized, as they say. And, you know, and it can be very attractive, and it's attractive so long as you don't let it start to define your personality. So, like, everything you want to think about what Tesla could have done is great, so long as you don't start assuming that there's a conspiracy to destroy Tesla, and not just that, well, you know, he was limited by the technology of his time. And, like, Tesla born today would be an even greater scientist than he was 100 years ago.
Perhaps, and perhaps not, because I think his shortcomings in his interpersonal skills perhaps would have limited those ideas from ever seeing the light of day, had it not been for somebody that was a bit more business savvy and understood how to make things happen and actually get them done. Yes, you have the technology and the idea and the understanding of how it should work, but we also need to disseminate it to the world. And do you know how to do that? I don't think you're very good at that. So unless you have,
I would like to think that Tesla, if he was born today, would actually be a theoretical physicist more than a practical engineer. And I think that's where he hit his wall. Is he was a guy who should have been a theoretical physicist. And as a theoretical physicist, he probably would have done far more than he did as a practical engineer, because as a practical engineer, he was limited by the physical constraints of both the world and the technology of the time. He could understand how energy moves, but it's important to remember, this is a guy that grew up with the story of luminiferous ether. And if you think about luminiferous ether, which actually, full disclosure, I think there's more to luminiferous ether than people are too willing to dismiss, but that's because I'm self-educated. So, you know, it's this own circular logic. You know, that goes to my basic idea of space having a physical reality that actually informs both matter and energy. In fact, like, my largest theory is that space is the same thing as matter and energy. It's just that when you fold it in certain ways, sometimes space is just distance, and sometimes space is energy, and sometimes space is work. And sometimes space is just a physical object because you fold it in the right way, and now suddenly it doesn't allow things to pass through it as easily. So that's my larger theory on space-time, but, you know, that's for a whole other episode. But I think that a guy like Tesla, who was good at math, could have actually revolutionized a lot had he been born later, because he would have been just an intellectual. He would have grown up in Czechoslovakia and, you know, gone to the greatest universities that the Soviet world had to offer, and probably would have been a great, actually he was Serbian, not Czechoslovakian, I apologize. Would have been a great a great adder to the knowledge base of humanity. But we all live in the world we're born into, and not the one that we should be born into. Because there probably is not a world any of us should be born into, because the world kind of sucks sometimes. All right.
No, but I mean, at the same time, right, we're living at an age where unbelievable discoveries are happening. And I think over the next 20, 30 years, the world is going to look tremendously different. And I, for one, am really glad I get to be alive during these times.
Oh, yeah. You know, I just heard that NASA was finally going back to testing nuclear engines. So we may get to Mars before a little bit faster.
Hey, all right.
Yeah, you know, that's what I always said, is that you don't need to go faster than light to unlock most of our solar system. And if you can go just a significant portion of the speed of light to get to Mars quickly, like within like a couple of weeks, suddenly that opens up a whole other realm of resources and things like that. So that's useful. Whole new planets to conquer, and as far as we know, there's nobody we have to exploit once we get there. We'll bring our own humans there to exploit.
Right.
There we go. All things in time. Any final thoughts you want to talk about this week? Anything that pricked your curiosity?
No, I think we got into it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to talk about, you know.
I love that they were able to use quantum computing for something other than computing, which is fascinating. And for the longest time, people were like, you know, yeah, you're making quantum computers so you can do calculations and you know, things much, much faster. But think about what you're doing. You're controlling quantized bits of particles, right? And using their quantum tunneled states to be able to do more functions at the same time as before. That was it. But if we're able to control, like, you know, quantized energy in that way, that's the more fascinating thing. That's the stuff that up till now had been theoretical, but now they're using these qubits to quantum tunnel with each other. And theoretically, they have made a wormhole between these two particles, which is fascinating. Cool. Absolutely fascinating, right?
Yeah.
So things like that make me really, really hopeful about where we're going and the discoveries that I'll get to witness.
I know, and that you know, this is the thing. And again, as an uneducated person, I will say that has always been my fascination about how matter and energy moves through the universe, and just the idea of quantum tunneling in general is a really fascinating field that if you could only apply it to practical engineering, you might be able to do so much. And in that sense, like, that's where like a guy like Tesla becomes this guy who's like, wow, if this guy could have all that knowledge and be a practical engineer, could he build, like, if Tesla were alive today, would he be building a Smoots drive that say, well, all we have to do is just quantum tunnel the object one Planck length to the left, and then we just keep on moving? And my picture went out. I don't know why that happened, but okay. No, but, you know, just the idea of just the ability to, yeah, okay. Well, it went out on my side. But just the idea of just moving at that speed, it's a possibility, you know? Tesla could have been an amazing person if he had been educated, you know?
Fair enough, but I think we do have a lot of amazingly bright people working on these problems now.
Yeah.
You know, so like, we're okay. We're doing pretty good.
I know we're okay. That's the thing. That's the thing, is like, you don't need another Einstein because we've got, you know, after Einstein's, we have Hawkins, and then, you know, we'll have somebody else. And we have all these guys whose names we don't know because they don't have a funny picture of them on the internet.
Right.
You know?
Paul Giamatti's not playing them yet on Verizon commercials.
Yes. But that's the idea. It's like, you know, like, there's a guy who just looks like a guy, and he's probably smarter than Einstein and Tesla put together. Or a woman who is smarter than Einstein and Tesla put together, who's out there at MIT right now, just like our little Riri Williams, just saying, well, actually, here's how you would do it if you had to do it, you know?
Yep.
You know, because that's the thing. Once you have a problem to solve, all you have to do is solve it.
Now you've got a purpose. Now you've got work to do. Ah, what a beautiful thing.
It is, and that's why I'm hopeful for the future, even though I will be dead eventually. I know that there will be something going on after I'm done, because, you know, people are going to figure stuff out.
Yeah, but even now, I think the time that we get to be alive, the amount of change that we're lucky enough to get to see, most of society, most of humanity never got to see this much change in one lifetime like we are. I mean, very few. Yeah. There's been some jumps, but like, we get to be alive for one of the big ones. That's amazing.
Well, honestly, the entire last, arguably 2 centuries have been just industrial revolution after industrial revolution. You know, in fact, to the point that now scientists are going to, well, I don't know if we're going to have any more industrial revolutions.
No, this is us reaching towards a singularity. That's the kind of change I'm talking about, right? Like brain-computer interfaces. Who knows what we can do with that? And it's like it's not calculable, really, the possible consequences of the technologies we're creating right now. I think we're going to get to see some wild and crazy stuff in the next few decades.
Oh, I know we will. That's the difference I will say between you and I, just in that I'm more interested in what we can do in the physical realm. Mm-hmm. You're probably more interested in what we can do in the quantum realm.
Or in everything, in space travel, like, that's
the thing.
If we can somehow meld consciousness into machines, adopt more and more technology into us, and until we can maybe control a robot right out in space. Maybe that's the way we were meant to traverse the cosmos. Maybe that's the way we can traverse it without having radiation or all these dangers of space travel affecting us. Mm-hmm. And we can and then if we can just put a helmet on, and then we're there, and the senses on our arms are being the nerve endings on our arms are being stimulated by receptors on the robot, and we can feel like we're there. Maybe that's and
what you need for that is it's actually there's if you use a quantum entanglement communication system, wherein what you were observing right now is being communicated immediately back to you. Quantum entanglement, and to be fair, I had this idea in college that space and time was actually not infinitely large, it's infinitely small. And the idea is that all of space and time is still, arguably, a single unit. But that because of the way that energy flows within that single unit, it looks like it is an expansive universe and an expansive time because energy and matter is flowing throughout the structure in a specific order, so that this is why you see quantum jumps when you are working with electrons. This is how we know about quantum tunneling, because things move from point A to point B or point A to point C without going to point B, which is arguably, even in our own minds, just a theoretically existent space that we have created in our 3D model of an atom. So we assume an atom is a three-dimensional structure, which is an assumption in and of itself. And when we see something move from one level to the next level without somehow moving through the space, that it just jumps, that is us seeing the fact that it's not a three-dimensional structure, that it's just moving within its own one-dimensional structure through time. So that's the idea. I think that the biggest problem that most people have with determining how the structure of the universe works is that they're going into more dimensions, not less. And that actually, if you can retract everything back to a single dimension, suddenly you're going to be able to see things in a different way, because now it just becomes like putting a key in a lock.
Right. So there's a lot of talk recently about how what are they, symmetries they call them, right? So the idea being that all the elemental forces were initially one force, right? And at one point, as the Earth cooled down, that same force got expressed in different ways, like the strong and weak nuclear force and gravity. All these things are the same force, and they separated at some point. And if you can do the math, you can make one force be seen through the lens of another force. So perhaps you're right in that sense that it is all just one thing that we're seeing in different ways.
And this is my theory. Like I said, an uneducated theory from an uneducated man. And that is, but you know what? I feel it in the cosmos. And so maybe it's true. And if I'm wrong, what does it hurt? I'm not trying to convert it.
No, but that's how we get to the right answer, by being wrong, right? Okay, check that off the list. Can't be that. Now we can, right? But that's the process, and there's beauty in that.
And that's what I love about the universe. That's what I love about cosmology. It's actually one of the most fascinating fields. It's just how does space work? Just raising that question. It's like, when you talk about dark matter and like, what is it? We don't know, but it does this thing. And it's like, well, if it's doing this thing, why is it doing that thing? And then it's just this whole process of breaking down, which is, again, where I come into it. It's that the dark matter is just space that comes pre-folded. It's like there's nothing folding the space. It's just that the space is folded there. It's wrinkly.
Some people have posited the idea that it's the term they call it is quantized inertia, right? So like the galaxies are spinning faster than they should for the amount of matter that's in there. It shouldn't be moving that fast. And some people are saying that what it's doing is dragging against the fabric of space-time, and the inertia of it is actually moving space-time. So space-time itself is the inertia of the space-time that's being trudged along is providing the extra gravity. That's a fascinating idea. I mean, who knows, but what an interesting way to think about it.
It's a great time to be alive, Mozz. I think that's what we can agree on.
Indeed. It's
a great time to be alive. All right, Mozzie. Any final thoughts tonight before we go to the
I think that was it.
That was it. That was the final thought. Right. And hey, friends, do you like my amazing Capes and Lunatics t-shirt that comes in extra fat guy sizes? Because I am an extra fat guy. As well as small sizes for you teeny people. Please go to Linktree, that's linktr.ee/CapesandLunatics. There you'll see all of our merch, as well as our ways to pay us money from Cash App to Patreon, and all of our shows. Likewise, if you don't really want to give us money, either by buying yourself neat, awesome items, or just giving us money for all the hard work we put in, you can just write to us and give us your uneducated opinions, or very educated opinions. If you have a PhD in cosmology, please let me know how wrong I am. And write us at CapesandLunatics@gmail.com. That's CapesandLunatics, all spelled out, at gmail.com. Or call us and give a lecture, which we will play on the air happily at 614-382-2737. That's 614-38-CAPES. And then, Mozz, how can people find you if they so desire?
Oh, they can email me at mozzmanzor@gmail.com or find me on Facebook under Mozz Manzor. That's MOZZMANZOOR.
And of course, you can always write to me in that old-fashioned email, whether we are mothers and fathers once did at superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. That's superconnectivityblog, all one word, to gmail.com. And find me on the Twitter as I live tweet things when I feel like it at Charlie Esser. That's CharlieEsser. Look for the 2 E's in the middle.
For quality. Bing!
Thank you, Mozz. Thank you, dear friends and dear hearts, for coming back once again to connect with us. Not tomorrow, but next time. It will be the 400th episode of Superconnectivity. And I've got to decide what we will do, but we will definitely be wearing our Superconnectivity t-shirts, team logos, and everything for next week. So definitely check out the video for that. And please super connect with us again. Good night.